Thank you for the opportunity to address the Corps of Engineers on ADOT's application for a Clean Water Act permit for the South Mountain Freeway project. On behalf of the community, I ask that the Corps of Engineers not grant ADOT this permit to build a highway along the Pecos Road alignment. To give you some perspective, we are meeting tonight on community lands that will be most affected if this permit is approved. Once the highway is built, if we were to walk outside of this building, we would hear the noise from that highway. And that highway would cross over 30 washes and waterways that flow directly into our lands. And we would see that highway. And most difficult for the community, we would see that highway cutting right through the sacred South Mountain Range, one of our most important cultural resources. This is because ADOT wants to build this highway directly next to our reservation lands. But to do this, they need a permit from you, the Corps of Engineers, to cross all of those desert washes and waterways that are located next to South Mountain and that flow into our lands. We recognize that the Corps of Engineers is not focused on the entire freeway project, but the Corps must consider the direct and indirect impacts resulting from the portions of the project that the Corps does control and regulate, which includes the waterways and washes that the freeway will cross, because the crossings are at the community's doorstep. This means that the Corps must consider the project's impacts on the community and its reservation lands. As I have said, the majority of the 30 jurisdictional waterways that will be impacted and need permit coverage are located directly next to the reservation and run into our lands just yards away from the freeway crossing. But ADOT has not made a critical showing that there are no other locations for this portion of the highway, such as north of South Mountain, that would have fewer impacts on wetlands and waterways that would not cross through South Mountain. ADOT rejected all but the one alternative in the eastern section of the project that ADOT is asking the Corps to permit. And it is troubling that this is the alternative with the most significant environmental impacts on the community of South Mountain. In the project's EIS, ADOT rejected the two alternatives located north of South Mountain, which are the US 60 extension and the I-10 spur, with an explanation that included only a few bullet points that did not even get into environmental or water resource impacts. The Corps can only issue a permit for the, quote, least environmentally damaging, practicable alternative, unquote, which is known as the lead pipe. ADOT has not shown that building the highway across Pecos Road is the lead pipe. This alignment crosses over 30 washes and waterways, impacts South Mountain, and impacts the environment of the community's reservation. This is not an alignment that the Corps should permit. Issuing a permit for the alignment also is done in the public interest, which is another legal standard that the Corps must meet when issuing Clean Water Act permits. As you will hear from our Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, issuing the permit will allow the freeway to cut through the South Mountain, which is sacred to the community. In addition, the freeway could bring contaminated water into our lands and cause flooding. Now, in closing my own words, I want to say to you, the Army Corps of Engineers, you have an opportunity to set the record straight. You have an opportunity that was a missed opportunity up in North Dakota, having to do with the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. You have an opportunity at this point to make a moral decision, to make a decision that would stop literally destruction of our land, of our culture, of our resources, of our spirituality, that our elders and our youth here will undoubtedly speak very emotionally to and articulate to more than I can. Please listen, and please listen to your heart. Listen that this is the ultimate decision that will make a very definite effect, a very historic effect on the survival of the Akamaka Pequot people.
If the Corps of Engineers issues a permit, this will allow for ADOT to build a highway directly through the South Mountain Range, which is MONA, which is referred to in our language. And when I speak to the sacredness of this mountain, and as an Akamaka, which I am doing, we carry respect, and we have certain things that are very important to us. The significance of one South Mountain starts from the beginning. since time immemorial, and where our creation began. Certain things that were given to us. The home of Silla, which is our Sillavich, our elder brother. The medicine that is collected there in water, still to this day, that is used for, whether it be for blessings, eternal use, for offerings. We still carry on our traditions, still carry our language, the respect for this mountain, the protection of it as they know from them. We carry the songs that go to this, and I'm going to share with y'all a song here today. It talks about Mata, it's talking about the mountain and how great, largely it is. This is Judah, the also mentioned, and Mashba, Manda, it's about Judah. Talks about the feeling that I gained from this, being there at one, the collecting of the flowers covering me.
This permit should not be issued, if at all, until after the Ninth Circuit has ruled. We and the tribe do expect to win at the Ninth Circuit, and when we do, all the previous construction of the freeway would have to be removed. All the damages would have to be mitigated. However, some damages may be irreversible. So waiting a few months would be a way for the Corps of Engineers and the taxpayers of the United States to avoid unnecessary liability and permanent damage to the nation's aquatic resources. Having participated in the proposed permit process before, which seemed to plod on for years, I wonder why this one seems to be so accelerated. When we started our efforts to stop this freeway over a decade ago, we learned that the sand and gravel industries were hoping to excavate and mine the sand and gravel in the area where the Salt River would be crossed, and to sell it for fill along the freeway route, which would be a special economic bonanza to them as they would find their sand and gravel so close by being paid to excavate and mine for the bridge. We have seen previous permits where the removal of soils of riverbanks was not allowed, and we were curious about this proposed permit, but it lacks those kinds of details. We would hope that this sign has been created for the profits of the sand and gravel companies in mind. One of the claims in our NEPA lawsuit is the freeway project has only completed preliminary designs around 50% level, which violates the requirements of NEPA. Also, since neither the specifics of the plan nor the expected mitigation measures can be expected to be accurate, what will likely be proposed will be likely to have put in unacceptable. We have also claimed in the lawsuit that cumulative impacts were not properly analyzed or addressed, and if the Federal Highway Administration and ADOT had complied with NEPA, we'd have the details of what is being proposed here now. But we don't. Yet the Corps of Engineers is continuing this pattern of vagueness and inadequate analysis and planning by not disclosing what the final damages and mitigations might be. If the Corps of Engineers doesn't know this, then there's no basis for a permit even for this hearing. In short, the permit as proposed is too vague to be valid, it's a moving target, and it's illegal. Specifically, mitigation measures that may be necessary have not yet been identified, and irreparable harm and damages may be more severe than currently projected. That's on page 9 of the public notice. The permit notice admits irreparable harm could be a consequence on page 5. The entire Section 404 permit process should be halted at this point, and then renoticed when the actual proposed mitigation plans and full portions of the permit are actually disclosed to the public before we're robbed of our chance in a real public hearing. It is also inadequate to offer mere compensatory mitigation in lieu fees. There's a legal and fiduciary obligation on the part of the Corps of Engineers to minimize adverse effects on populations of plants and animals, as well as human uses such as recreation, besides controlling runoff either onto the Ahwatukee foothills or Gila River community side. Despite this, the Corps for assurances contractors for the freeway's construction have already exhibited a failure to take care of natural resources and seem to be motivated more by speediness than proper care. Then there's the questions. Where do the possible hazardous waste materials that would be uncovered or generated? And how will they be handled? What are the storage areas where water would settle before discharge? And what are the plans to treat or pre-treat them before discharge into the waters of the United States? The draft highway maintenance drainage manual from ADOT is from February 2015, and there is no update. It's improper to use a draft document for this bill. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Issue this permit, ADOT will put the freeway right through South Mountain, forever altering the mountain range's cultural significant landscape. Also, the freeway will run right through where community members still conduct traditional religious activities and where trails and shrines are located. Back in 2007, the Community Council passed a resolution that said the South Mountain Range is a sacred place, and as the community strongly opposed any alteration of South Mountain for any purpose, because this would be a violation of the cultural and religious beliefs of the Gila River Indian Community, and that would be a negative effect on the continuing livelihoods of the people of Gila River Indian Community. One such important issue is tribal culture. The community's opposition should be respected. On behalf of the community, I respectfully ask that the Board of Engineers deny the permit so ADOT can locate this freeway somewhere else.
As the Corps is aware, we have requested and received some of the information that we need from ADOT to analyze impacts on the community. A brief technical review has revealed there are possible impacts from drainage by development of the freeway. Impacts include increased peak discharge, increased velocity, and increased water surface elevations along certain segments of the Pecos Road alignment. Additional impacts include commingle of off-site drainage with on-site water quality basins, introducing a possible water quality issue draining into the reservation. We will provide additional and more detailed comments once we have the opportunity to review the full set of drainage data that we have requested, including information on the alignment that continues from Pecos Road and cuts through the South Mountain passing 51st Avenue. This segment is very crucial from a flood control perspective, as there is a mountain watershed just northeast that currently introduces broad shallow sheet flow entering the reservation, particularly into the Kamaki area where we are currently gathered. Introduction of the freeway creates an obstruction to flow and could concentrate these drainage patterns to a point, possibly increasing peak discharge and volumes entering the reservation. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is aware of current impacts from flooding to the Kamaki area from our December 2016 request for funding under the Section 205 U.S. Army Corps Authority. Water does not adhere to political boundaries unless the boundary is a physical barrier that changes its direction. In this case, the freeway parallels the community's boundary and is a physical barrier. Although our funding request is a separate item from this freeway development, they are intrinsically linked by sharing the watershed and its ephemeral drainage patterns, which include the waters of the U.S.
It's a non-profit organization, and we have been working for over 40 years to protect and preserve our mountain parks. South Mountain Preserve is the centerpiece of the Phoenix Mountain Preserve system. Development of the South Mountain Freeway, which is to be facilitated in part by the issuance of the proposed 404 permit, would cut through the southwestern end of the South Mountain Preserve, resulting in substantial direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts to the environment and the recreational purposes, uses, and values of the preserve. More directly, the issuance of the permit will impact multiple natural washes throughout the area, disrupting wildlife corridors through the South Mountain Preserve. Mitigation of the crossings of the Salt River must consider access to recreational areas upstream and downstream, including Tres Rios and the Rio Salado Oeste project. It is also unclear how the impacts of this project will be mitigated, particularly since the Corps acknowledges in the notice that, quote, it is still reviewing and evaluating the applicant's mitigation proposal.
And I'm here with the Grand Canyon, or the Arizona chapter of Sierra Club. We have more than 60,000 members here in Arizona, members and supporters, so please accept these comments on their behalf. So, as others have said, the proposed freeway would increase runoff into the South Mountain rivers and would further impair an already impaired section of the Salt River, as listed under Section 303D of the Clean Water Act. To contribute to further impairment of this reach of water is contrary to the Clean Water Act. Likewise, the proposed action would degrade several ephemeral washes that drain into the Gila River from South Mountain, and the western section of the project would cross a number of jurisdictional waters. Information that ADOT has provided to the public indicates that although increased pollution will occur to these already impaired waters and other waters of the U.S., a thorough analysis has not been completed on the types of contamination or the levels of impairment. ADOT has stated that they will implement measures to reduce water quality impacts. However, all mention of these measures have been very vague, so we are unable to determine if they will help mitigate these impacts. As others have stated, such vagueness permeates all potential impacts and mitigation measures that ADOT has put forth, which makes providing substantive comments difficult, and it also prevents the Army Corps of Engineers from making an informed decision. So in summary, ADOT has failed to minimize and avoid adverse impacts of this project on our limited and precious aquatic and other natural resources in the Phoenix area, and it has not adequately addressed how negative impacts to these jurisdictional waters and other natural resources will be properly mitigated. ADOT has also failed to address the cumulative and negative impacts of this project on jurisdictional waters. So we encourage the Army Corps of Engineers to deny approval of this horrible project.
Those are people here that live here, that have been here since pre-colonial era, and who deserve to have any of their waterways reserved in a pristine and natural state pre-colonization. So protection of the waterways, as I mentioned, falls on federal jurisdiction.
We should and consent by these tribes. Yet again, this is a repeat of history, unresolved conflict with tribal nations, and we need to stop the assault on our nations. And my question to you is, would you destroy something such as MACA that is important to us as a community? Because the way I view it, this is important to the communities that have longevity in this area, and we should keep that in consideration, how to protect those resources as well. And with that, I ask you to please deny with prejudice this project.
Thank you. All right, so my name is Napoleon. I'm an ASU student. I graduate tomorrow, actually. So, sorry, I'm completely blank right now. I can only say that the mountain is important to us, and it's important to all of us in the community because my mother is grown up here, my brother is from here, Kamaki, and when I heard about this project going on years ago, first it was ADOT that was proposing the South Mountain Freeway. My mom was telling me stories of how it's all going to be desecrated if it goes through. And I know that they're already going through it as of right now, and things are getting into the works of desecration now. The thing that I've had a problem with is that the importance of the future generations that is after us, what is the importance of them in our communities? And when I heard about this hearing with regards to water, in regards to protection of it, we also know that water is very sacred to us as well, as opposed to what's going on in Standing Rock as well. So it's important that we all recognize that whether it's a freeway or containment to water, everything that we hold here in this area is very sacred to us, and that is Governor Lewis said that what I would say out of that is that we said no to a freeway, and we're going to say no to a permit as well. So I could talk about all the logistics and engineer stuff, but I'm pretty sure you'll hear the rest of that, so I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Women raised traditionally to protect and defend the water, I urge the United States Army Corps of Engineers to deny the permit, which will divert the natural runoff and cause flooding and unforeseen consequences to our community and the future generations. Recently, I was asked plants to make a cradle from the willow for a newborn child. We can no longer utilize our plants and medicinal plants along the riverway due to the toxins in the water. This is questionable runoff, which is no longer safe. This offsets our spirituality and will affect the current generations. How many years has the water been tested, and what is the toxicity level for each test? Are people still live the traditional way and want the desecration and abuse of our sacred waters to stop? Are people still hunt and live off the game? Where is the borderland study? What effects of contamination will it have on our B allotments, the Maricopa secondary allotments directly south of the freeway? Protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the two tribes against noxious fumes and toxic water runoff, not to enter and contaminate our aquifers. And from the pollution of the harbor, allow the runoff onto their lands. This is their freeway, which would only desecrate the South Mountain Regional Park. Sign off on a 100-year guarantee that the runoff will not cross our boundary. Everyone always assumes the runoff should be directed onto the indigenous lands. Gila River was not taken into consideration. The two distinct tribes left out. The potential undesirable impacts require a case-by-case consideration. Under federal law, no standard contained in the preceding section shall affect the applicable federal law on regulations such as the Clean Water Act of 1977, the Clean Air Act of 1970, the Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974. Environmental concerns would be the wetlands, cultural values, recreation, fish and wildlife, flood hazards, land use, the water supply and quality, safety and welfare of the people. Please protect our indigenous ways in this multicultural world by denying the permit. Thank you.
There won't be no peaceful time to sit outside to enjoy the morning sunrise or the evening sunrise that we enjoy every evening and every morning. Our wildlife animals that live around the area of our homes with my grandchildren, which we watch every day, the wildlife and run to look for secure areas to build, because we have a lot of wildlife animals that live there. And it upsets me, being an elder from the Maricopa tribe, that I was not aware of this freeway to be built on the second route. It's just so close to our home, and I ask that you look at another resource route. What I already see just driving along the other roads, that they're cleaning out the land by the boundary families that have lived off the boundaries, that had already sold their land and they had already moved out. And my grandchildren think that homes are going to be built. As a grandmother, I tell my children what is going on by the slum areas within our community. And if you were Native American, you would know and understand how we feel about our community. I was always told by my late great-grandparents that this day would come, that there would be new surrounding areas and infrastructure going around our communities, which is happening right now. I'm very proud to be who I am. I'm Maricopa, from District 7, born and raised there, and that's my home. And I'm proud to be a member of my community here in this community. Thank you.
Members looking for our river over here. This is what my grandfather taught me when I was a young man. Several years ago, they built, added on the 51st year, and that cul-de-sac to run off. Well, my mom's house over there was built in 1963. Several years ago, it was the first time it's ever flooded. It flooded inside her house to about 10 inches. It flooded on my yard to about 8 inches, and it was going to the wash that's behind my house. That's where the water was going. It was remembering where it was going. When this water ended, it left the residue there. And this residue was good enough that you could peel it like paint. This residue was black. Now that's just from just barely, there's a little bit of work that's been done to keep this road. What's going to happen if the going to remember a way to get back to that river. And there's washes all along in this community. In 1968, my grandfather told me that this stuff was going to happen. That was very hard to believe at that time. But guess what? It is. And it's something that we're not prepared for. So once again, all I want you to remember is simple, and it may be just the way we see it, but it's been true that water does have memory. It knows where it's going to go. No matter what we do, and what's inside that water, it's going to end up somewhere here on its way to that river over there. That's all I want to tell you.
August and September 2014, the rain gods dumped a lot of water on the north side of South Mountain Park. City of Phoenix Flood Control quickly built a retention basin at 27th Avenue and South Mountain Road. It's about a half a mile north of the baseline to garner all of that water that came down. I guess my question is, what levels of flood intensity have you designed to? And then I have a question for the gentleman from ADOT that says they've got pits that they're going to collect the water off of the freeway, let it settle out, and then let that water go into the natural drainage. That's what happens currently right now in the Ravine Conveyance Channel. The Ravine Conveyance Channel was built to take the irrigation waters through. We're talking about natural waters that flow through here. The dirt and the grime off of 8 lanes of freeway is going to cause a horrendous condition down the road.
If I could make a very quick question to the members of the Army Corps of Engineers, if you would simply answer me one simple question at this moment, so I can proceed with my comments. The question is this, sir. Are you familiar with, have you read the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples that was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on September of 2007? Have you read it? Are you familiar with it?
Probably at some point, but
I would like an answer.
I can't confirm, sir. I don't know.
You have not. Are you familiar with it?
Sir, please continue with your comment.
This is telling you you're not familiar.
I'm not
Thank you
familiar.
for your answer. Thank you for your answer. That the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is the law of the land. By the lawgivers, by the lawholders, we're speaking of things that are the law of the people. We're speaking about the rule of law, not the law of the rulers. That's the clarification. In that declaration, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which is part of the standards of international law, Article 18, Indigenous peoples have the right to participate in decision-making in matters which would affect their rights through representatives chosen by themselves in accordance with their own procedures, as well as to maintain and develop their own indigenous decision-making institutions. Specifically, sir, members of the Army Corps of Engineers, members of the community, no one here tonight has spoken in favor of this project. No one has given their consent. Therefore, I will submit that this project is in violation of Article 32 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous States, Indigenous peoples. Have the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for the development or use of the lands or territories and other resources. States shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the indigenous peoples, I will conclude, through their own representative institutions in order to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent prior to the approval of any project affecting their lands and territories or other resources. In particular, in connection with the development, utilization, or exploitation of mineral, water, or other resources. So we will be submitting for the knowledge of the whole participants in this assembly and members of the board the information regarding to the application of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a standard for evaluation and also a criteria to determine the legality of such a project before the vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darcy Glenn. I'm an elder from District 6. I welcome the Army Corps of Engineers for the land and the home of the still free and wild Akamaralka and Pipak. This is the West End. In 2012, in a community meeting, I made a motion, and in that motion, I asked that that freeway not be built on our northern border or through Malta. That is our holy mountain. That belongs to us. I go up there and I pray. I leave my prayers and my offerings up there. I sing my songs. I go up there to pray because that is what our tradition tells us to do. That is the home of our Creator. And I go up there to pray, just as many of my community members do. I ask you, the Army Corps of Engineers, not to give that permit to this ADOT. They lied to you. They're not telling you the whole truth. The environmental impact study that they go by does nothing for us. It guarantees them everything. But when you go and look back at it, it has nothing to do with us. Everything that my people are coming here to tell you, they're speaking from their hearts. They're trying to tell you what's going on. This is our land. We have been here for thousands and thousands of years. We have never fought against the United States. We have never signed a treaty with the United States. Our young men have served valiantly with the Army, the Marines, the Navy, and the Air Force. I ask you to please honor us as human beings, as people of the earth. We, the Akamaralka and the Pipak. I ask you as warriors, as protectors and defenders, to protect and defend us, and not give them that burden. Don't let them have it. You and the Army Corps of Engineers, you took a vow. You made an oath. Stand by that oath. Stand by that vow. Protect us and defend us. I ask you to do this, please, and take care of us. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Lori Thomas Riddle. I live here in the community. In fact, I live down the road at a toxic Superfund site I grew up on. First of all, I want to say there was a missed opportunity for a lot of our kids to come. I had a group of kids that were supposed to come. They wanted to hold up their posters, and because of what was posted about no banners or no posters, they didn't want to speak. They wanted to speak visually to you guys. So there's a demographic that's missing here tonight. In the past, there has been some broken promises in regards to agreements, and one of the examples I want to mention is the I-10 freeway. We were told that we could have frontage roads, and that never came. It still to this day never came. Also, like on my contaminated site, my grandfather's contaminated site, we were told that land was going to be looked at once every year. Never once have I seen anybody come and assess it on an annual basis. We're basing it on racial discrimination and religious discrimination, because they're not acknowledging our religion as Ogden people to pray in the way that we usually do. Our people have gone to the mountain to collect things, to hunt, to intertwine with nature, to pray, just like Mike said. You know, people do go up there. And that's being impeded with this freeway. They won't be allowed to cross. The animal crossings aren't going to address the human crossings. People always ask me, what's the worst that could happen? I'll tell you what the worst that could happen is. I saw my daughter as a child grow up with nosebleeds every day, and pus coming out of her ears, and hurting and pain because of their toxic exposure. Right now, as I speak, I have a friend that has a young daughter the same age as mine, in her 30s. She's going through emergency surgery because of toxic exposure. That's what the worst that could happen is. My My cries for my family's pain have been diminished and just thrown to the side all these years. And consultation is a joke. When people try to come here and speak to our tribal leaders and our tribal members, it's not really communication. There's such a big area. And I guess I'll end with just saying that this freeway doesn't belong here. Now,
I'm here too, Joe Tomahawk Tate, Reverend. And I am from the Gila River Indian Community, Saskatoon, which is the capital of the Indian Reservation. On behalf of the youth, the babies, the elders that weren't able to make it out here today, I come here not to explain to you what I feel, but to tell you that you are in control of now. We always talk about these three things: past, present, and future. Well, right now we're in the very time of being present. Water is life. As I came from North Dakota, I spent time up there. Many of us had left our jobs and our families to go to something that we truly strongly believe in. And I leave this question with each and every one of you: would you get and leave your job or leave your family for something that belongs in your heart and your mind? One of the major flaws that I've seen out there is that nobody could understand each other. The protectors, the warriors, the tribal people, dabbled, military, security, could not step into other people's shoes. Therefore, understanding may not be alive and well. So today I bring forth to you that now we are in the present time, that you think about what you can do today. As in the good book, it says that we are not promised tomorrow. When the good Lord asks you, what did you do that was so great in what you did? What would be on that big screen when the time is running out? Imagine if you could see your life in that time and there was only 1 minute left in your life. Would you be sitting down, typing, and writing on a piece of paper? Or would you make a decision that would be everlasting for not only a native community, but for a people, a life? I come up here with my anthem. Maybe you don't understand this. Maybe you understand the cross. But I have these because it is who I am as an individual. That I was born a Native American. There are many people here that are educated, but they're in school right now. There are youth that are resting right now, getting ready for school tomorrow, for it is a community. Maybe you cannot understand or step into my shoes, but realize that there is a time ticking in your life. That this is very important to people. Think about it. You have 20 seconds left. What would you do? Would you say goodbye? Would you hug your loved ones, or would you sign a paper that will have an everlasting impact in the community? I don't want history to repeat itself. I have faith in you guys, even though I see many things that I cannot talk about. I leave you with that. The time is ticking for you as well. Zero. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. As Roy mentioned earlier, we did have a contingent of youth that wanted to come, but felt that they would not be able be able to speak or express themselves properly. When I came, I saw a public speaking area outside, and they would not even be allowed in the building with the signs that they created. Most people have not heard of our group yet. We were in San Francisco for Earth Day. We were also there for their Region 9 EPA to discuss the environmental issues. I stand before you here to discuss the environmental impact of what's going to happen. I drove through a rainstorm when I got here, and I see the water beating off the road. What's going to happen when that water comes off of an 8-lane freeway? Is it going to kill the vegetation around it? Is it going to kill the animals that rely on that water? Is it going to destroy our natural and cultural resources that have been on that mountain for centuries, before anybody was ever here, that have been here since there have been people in this region? What is going to happen to all of that by allowing a freeway to go through. With every freeway comes debris, trash, accidents, chemicals. What is going to happen to all of this stuff when it mixes in with the groundwater? When it comes in to the land, they have told you time and time again, speakers have gotten up, educators as well as tribal members, as well as people that work for the community, telling you that the water drainage is going to be dangerous. It is going to be detrimental to the health of our children. I have a 2.5-year-old grandchild, second generation, that is going to be exposed to stuff that could possibly kill her because of the dangers of the toxins that we have, that we've created on our planet. What are we leaving for our children? What are we leaving for our future generations? We need to, you, the Army Corps of Engineers, have the authority to stop this process, to stop the bleeding, to stop the hemorrhaging of our mountains, to stop the destruction of our natural resources, and to protect not only my granddaughter, my future, but your future, and all the people that rely on the water that come into Arizona, and not just Arizona, because the Gila River is a contributor to the Colorado River. There are other states that are involved in this. There are millions and millions of people that will be involved by this decision. You, as the Army Corps of Engineers, need to deny this permit for the protection of our future, as well as generations to come. Thank you. Thank you so much.
As community members, I'm grateful to be standing here on this land that's Peepash and O'odham and many other tribes who have come through here for generations and millennia. It's hard for us sometimes to understand that there have been hundreds and thousands of people protecting this water. That's why people here are so passionate about it. So I just want to give thanks and acknowledge it's very difficult for people to come up here and speak, but I just want to acknowledge everyone that has tonight because it gave me strength to speak. I usually stand behind a camera and just document for people who can't be here, because there's many people who can't come here for many, many reasons. I also want to acknowledge that the tribe waited until January to request this hearing, so I'm grateful to the tribal leaders who finally requested this hearing. Because I'm not a scientist, I'm a mother, and I'm a filmmaker. But I read these documents years ago when they came out, and the thing I circled right away was diverting water off of the highway. The highway would divert the water that feeds natural watersheds. It would go across Salt River. Even though it's a dry riverbed, we have hopes of bringing back that water so it can flow to the ocean again. That's the dream that we have for our children. My children are 3 and 7, and I stand here today on behalf of them, who have to sadly grow up as water protectors, who have to sit here and watch their water being contaminated right here on this reservation, who have to fight for it. That's why we fight for it. It's because hundreds of years ago, relatives of my family fought to protect this water, my husband's family, who I'm grateful to share on this land. We moved here because it's a beautiful place at the base of the Estrella Mountains, and we found out that water, not only this water, but other water that's contaminated and toxic, is going to be flowing through canals that my husband's family helped dig. These canals that are all throughout Phoenix, this Maricopa that we call this, the county of Maricopa, that name comes from the Peepash. Maricopa is Peepash, that's what it was called. So I honor that all this land that goes all the way to the mountains from both sides is land that's traditionally indigenous, and I'm grateful to the people who stand here. So I urge the Army Corps of Engineers, I know this is just a show that you guys are putting on, but I hope that for once you can actually make the right decision and reject this permit. Because ADOT is failing. It's failing to promote evidence, it's failing to provide. They've had how many decades to show us an accurate plan of how they're going to divert the water, and we haven't seen it yet. So let's be transparent. These drawings are great, but I've been looking online to find these and I haven't. There's no evidence that they're going to protect the cultural, sacred, environmental destruction that's going to happen when they dive into this mountain. Right here, we just watched the sunset. Right here, everyone I hope took a minute to stand outside because it's a long way for you guys to come. I saw people saying, I don't want to go to the West End. Why is it way over there? Because that's where the highway's going to come. Right? What's going to happen when those plants aren't being fed the water that for thousands of years has been running off that mountain? So I'm going to urge you to do the right thing like that gentleman said. You live in the present. I know you're shaking your head, but you also said I can have a couple extra seconds, so I'm just going to take a couple extra seconds. Okay? Because my kids aren't here yet, and they would have spoke. So I just want to urge you, please, all been referring to Standing Rock. Right here we can make a difference. And I want all these community members that came today to keep coming, right? Because where are you at all these other things when we're in our district meetings? Where are you standing up then when it really matters to you? So thank you again. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. And I also want to say, Ha Ibaish. That means water is life and Kipash.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Blackhorse. I want to thank the Gila River Indian Community for allowing us to come together this evening. I am not from here. I'm from the Navajo Nation up north, but I do work in this community. I am a clinical social worker in this community, and I actually work just right up the street from here. And so, a big part of what I do as a social worker is to be an advocate. Our profession is rooted in advocacy and social justice. And I've been an advocate today for the people that I serve in this community to say that the freeway should not be built. I think that you can see here tonight that there is an overwhelming opposition to the freeway. What will happen when this freeway is built? And we're talking about water, the concern for water, the health issues that will come along with the freeway that is being built, the social issues, the crime, the pollution, the contamination of water in the community. This will all affect the livelihoods of every single person within this community. We are standing not even 1 mile away from where it will be built, just right here. And you can see, this is a Boys and Girls Club. There's a health clinic on the street. People live not far from where it will be built. It will affect the health. There's already an enormous health disparity within this community. There's asthma. The health disparity of asthma in this community is extraordinary. It's huge. So I want to ask you to take that into consideration. And I want you to understand that Mrs. Riddle here said this earlier, that in the plan, there is a plan to help horses get through, right? The concern of animals, which is rightly so. But there's no plan for the way that human beings will get past the freeway. How will the community here connect with the sacred mountain? Please take that into consideration. We need that pathway. It needs to be clear. So please deny the permit. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My culture has started to vanish before my eyes can see. Part of me has been vanished, right? All because of my river, my little rivers. My lips turned into shaking river. My river ceased to be. So, from a personal perspective, it's like I've lost my identity. But this river, because it's been dammed, and now we want to affect this mountain that's going to affect generations beyond me. So, besides that, there comes the issue with water. We're knocking it off them. Knocking with the people. So it's natural for us to want to protect these water sources. And besides that, growing up, I was labeled a severe asthmatic. I was living at a hospital where it comes to money. So when you want to talk about the pollution that this freeway is going to bring to our people, what is it going to do to our kids? And for me, from a personal perspective, I don't want to see these kids have to go through these health problems in the future because you guys want to put the freeway so close to our community. Thank you.
But I do have a concern, and it's my understanding that our water, our drinking water that comes out of our faucets comes from our aquifers. So the runoff from this freeway potentially will go off into the aquifers of our river. We really can't see our river. It still runs, it's underground. So there's a lot of things that can go into it that can stick there forever, things that can move, that
from us. You know, and it can come out of our sink water. And those things are hard to catch. They're tested from different wells, and you can't really determine where exactly these pollutants are unless they're tested all the time in a lot of areas. Besides that, I have to allude to the 2014 flood. I was out here at the school just a little bit ways down the road, and I've been to Niagara Falls, and there's this 1,000-year flood that happened in 2014. I believe it came twice, and it was literally Niagara Falls coming down on South Mountain. I thought it was going to be like a quick storm, but the storm lasted hours, and water just kept falling. And I can just imagine had there been a freeway, infrastructure that would have been destroyed. And like I said, it's come more than like once that year. The weather patterns are changing in the world. We don't know what's going to happen. There are so many pollutants going out, not just in the community, but as far as the world, that we should be concerned. The decisions we make in such a small place such as our community do affect the world. Like I said, the weather patterns are changing. We determined that the wind so far now, if there's a lot of pollutants, we'll flush it out. However, the weather patterns are changing. The winds can stay stagnant. There's acid rain, potential for acid rain. And we are a community with a history of detrimental health effects, diabetes, high rates of obesity. There's a lot of things to consider in our community. We're not just a population. We've been here for thousands of years. And that needs to be considered. We're a volatile community with volatile health concerns. Thank you.
He wants to express his comments this evening, and I also just want to let you know that he hiked from the south side of the mountain, from South Mountain Park, and he hiked to this side of the mountain today. And he came all this way to express his comments. Please do that and sign by video.